This conference is brought to you by CallStack, a total software engineering consultancy.
I think the premise for today's talk is, in reality, the last 9 years of React and the last 8 years of React Native has fundamentally changed our expectations of modern web and native development. And it's very typical in these conferences to have a panel of the platforms talking about what they want you to invest in, the new projects they have coming out. But I think in reality, the most interesting conversations that I've had at this conference and some of the more recent ones is just the challenges that you have as a developer to figure out how the heck am I going to have this app have a great experience, native experience across these different platforms. And so this is a panel of engineers, engineering managers, developers that have been through it. And we're just going to share some, the challenges that we face and what's working for us. I have had a lot of you give me some questions you want to ask. We'll have a little time at the end, perhaps for a lightning round. If you have additional questions, I will check them. I think on Twitter, I'm Chris_Trag, and on LinkedIn, if you want to ask some more questions, I will check them near the end. But let's dive in. So, Michał. Michał is the Director of Technology for CallStack. He has been in React Native since 2015. I'm really excited to chat with you. I also want to welcome, we have Mike. Mike is the Senior Director of Engineering for DirecTV. He is leading the team that is building the app experience across many different platforms. We have Bart. Bart is the CEO and the tech lead for TWG, the Widlarz group. He has been in the React Native space for a while. Bart and I got to know each other. He's one of the lead maintainers for React Native Video, which is a very popular open source library that you can integrate into React Native. And then Arushi is an software engineer at Meta on the React team. And folks, you might recognize the person on the end. So Mo, first off, before I introduce you, can we give a big round of applause for how hard Mo's been working this week? Mo is the mobile tech. Mo is the head of mobile at Theodo, and he also runs the React Native meetup group in London. And we'll talk a little bit about an upcoming React Native conference in London later this year that I'm very excited about. All right, let's get started. Michał, let's start with you. You've been building React Native apps since the beginning. I spent some time on your GitHub, and literally 9 years working on React, and 8+ years working on React Native at CallStack. And so, for you and actually many of the folks in this room, you're OG React. You've been through it all.
Thanks, man.
And so, as an app developer, what are some things that have changed since the beginning? What are some things that, it's still really frustrating? And I'm curious if there's anything major in these last 8-9 years that have surprised you when it comes to our little world of React development.
All right, so I think a lot has changed over the years. And first and foremost is the developer experience. Back in the day, I remember the red screen of death. I was literally perspiring with a cold sweat when I saw the red screen on my mobile phone, and I knew that there's going to be a lot of time that is necessary to kind of pinpoint the root cause of an issue. And it's way different now. We have a lot of great debugging tools. We have React Native Debugger incoming, we had Flipper, and many other great libraries that facilitates this process. So now, when you are getting this red screen, it's nothing too serious.
The developer experience has improved so much.
Yes, a lot. And the other aspect of developer experience that has improved is the amount of libraries and ready-to-use solutions that are available out there.
Yep.
Right. So I remember that each time we had to write some specific logic. We had to use some SDK. We basically had to do everything from the scratch, write it on our own. And now you have React Native directory. You can just go there and kind of pick what you need from ready-to-use solutions,
right,
which is also a great developer experience. So these two things I think are the major changes in the developer experience. But on the other hand, what's changed is the business landscape as well. Because I remember this 8 years ago, the kind of apps that we've worked on were very specific. Those were rather smaller apps, smaller businesses, maybe some fitness apps,
Startups.
some dating apps, yes,
Yep.
startups. And right now, React Native is used by all kinds of businesses. We always had support of Facebook, Meta, but now we also have Microsoft, we have Amazon, and we have a lot of Fortune 500 companies that do use React Native. And React Native is a safe bet now, and it wasn't back in the day, or maybe not as safe as it is right now.
It's a great point, and I think a good actual segue, we're going to do a little history lesson. Mike, DirecTV is a powerhouse in the media space. Actually, 30 years ago, it launched, 1994, as a satellite TV provider. And then the same year that React Native started, in 2015, it was acquired by AT&T, and now y'all are an independent company again. And I think when I look at the history of DirecTV, it actually is a look at the history of streaming video and how it's evolved over the last 30 years. And so I would love to hear from you. Tell the developers of the room about DirecTV, especially those that aren't from the States. What are the different platforms that you have an experience on for your customers? And what does it take to build the DirecTV experience?
Absolutely. So first, it's a pleasure to be here. Really appreciate being invited. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Ultimately, it's a challenge, right? The platforms we support at this point are N+. You can't even count them on one hand anymore, right? It takes a team of unbelievably talented engineers. That's one of the ingredients, right? It takes a CI/CD pipeline that's unbelievably well crafted by, again, another team of engineers. And then finally, it takes the collaboration across all departments, right? Our product department is amazing. We collaborate with our UI UX design teams, plural, and we collaborate across the entire organization to bring an unbelievable streaming experience to our customers, right? So on top of that, it's the transition, right? We started building this React Native application targeting, a subset of the platforms in 2019. And we just continued to add more and more platforms. And that was a challenge because which we'll get to next, there's specific things that tend to not really be cross-platform. There's not really a true solution to make it easy to just say, okay, I want to just do this. How come I can't just do this and make it work on all the different platforms? And, those are the type of challenges that get me excited. Those are the type of things that ultimately, make our engineers, want to come to work every day and solve those problems. And ultimately, it's not just about like delivering, like the best in class streaming experience. Like we have so many different content types that we have to support. We want to give a variety, right? We have everything from live content, which a lot of companies don't, like streaming companies don't support. We have live, and we go all the way to video on demand and everything in between. We call it VOD, right? And we support all of those, and they're all different challenges, and we have to tweak them all specifically, especially our video player, in order to support it. So, lots goes into this, and it's a team of people behind me, supporting me, and supporting the organization to make it happen.
Mike, can you list off the platforms or experiences that you have DirecTV on?
Yes, we got Fire TV, we got tvOS, which is Fire TV.
Sorry.
Amazon, definitely great collaborating with you guys.
Shut up, Chris. Okay. So iOS, Android, any other out-of-tree platforms? Kind of curious, as a customer, where can they experience DirecTV?
Yeah, like iOS, Android, all the tablet variants,
Okay.
right? We're lots of things in the works, and Tizen is Samsung, if you're familiar with it.
Is there a web app experience?
And we have the web app experience as well. We do.
Powered by React or React
Powered
Native?
by React Native Web. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Incredible. So I want to shift over to Arushi. Arushi, you're at Meta. You're on the React team. I was gathering questions for this panel, and I realized there's more than I expected. Folks that watching on the live stream or here in this room that think the React team are directly building the Instagram and Facebook apps. I would love to have you have a moment to give us an inside look of what is the React Native team, what do you work on? And as an engineer, what is it like to be within the company, but also the React mission? So give us a little look at, are you editing the like button, or is it a little different than some assumptions I've heard?
Yeah, I think so. As a React engineer on the Meta team, we don't necessarily build Instagram or Facebook app ourselves. We focus more on building that React framework and the ecosystem to actually power those Meta products. I think it was mentioned at ReactConf keynote as well that there are thousands of screens and like surfaces within Meta products that are using React. So we necessarily do build for them, but interestingly, our developers at Meta are very similar to the open source developers out there.
Similar needs.
Yeah, exactly similar needs. And our role also becomes very similar there. Like we build on those new capabilities, like performance optimizations, or ensuring that this framework like remains robust and scalable. So I mostly work on like the new architecture rollout, both to the open source as well as internal.
I was going to ask that, like in your bio and in your talk yesterday, you're talking about bringing new architecture to open source. Like practically for those in this room, like what does that mean? How is that applicable and what does that mean for them?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of pieces to getting that new architecture out to open source, and I would like to have it in 3 buckets, let's say. One was the library migration piece of it, which is collaborating with all of those partners like Expo, Software Mansion, CallStack to get those libraries new architecture compatible. That was the biggest piece. I think the other pieces were backwards compatibility, like making all of those APIs that were working earlier make them work in the new architecture. And I think the third biggest piece that we focused on as a team is the interop layers. That's like huge work by my teammate Ramanpreet. I think he focuses more on the interop layers.
Of course.
Yeah, so those were the 3 major pieces of like involved in getting the new architecture to open source.
It makes sense. Bart, I want to talk about video for a little bit. So you are a resident video guy. Okay.
Hey, hello.
So I realize I've been guilty. I've built React native apps, and when it comes to video, often I'm like, I'm reaching, whether it's payments or video, I'm reaching for a pre-built solution. React native video is a fully independent project. It has it has 200,000 downloads a week, and it's not owned by some parent conglomerate. It is truly an open source project that you have actually jumped in to help with. There's an original maintainer, and you and a lot of your folks at TWG have jumped in to help. And so I'd be curious, when it comes to implementing video, what are some of the challenges that you and the developers you're working with in supporting when they send you a pull request or file an issue? Like, give us a little look at what it's like to kind of be focused in the video space.
Yeah, sure. So basically, we already mentioned some of the challenges that are there. Like Mike mentioned, having so many platforms out there, and each has some challenges. And we've got like new architecture, and we also having the rewrite in the process. So these are all the challenges that are there because React Native Video is a part of React Native ecosystem. So it inherits all of the things that are there. And when it comes to the challenges that are strictly for the video player, it might sound like it's an easy task, but to make sure that the video player is reliable and stable across all the platforms, this is like the main challenge. And if you add to the top of this that you need to have the content that's secure with DRM, and you want to have like offline DRM, or like you want to have like DRM for non-GSM platforms.
GSM being Google Services?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so these are like the platforms that don't want to depend on
taking for
service
granted
provider.
kind of pre-built solutions on other platforms.
Yeah. Basically, most of the developers basically take this as a for granted. These are just the standard way you build apps. You just use GSM. Yeah, but it's the other way around, and we also think of supporting this. And on top of this, you need to keep up with all the trends that are out there, like complex UIs.
And we'll touch on that in a minute. I think I want to also talk about some of the codecs in DRM you're handling as well. Mo, I want to shift to you. Mo, you're a busy person. you run actually an excellent React Native meetup group, a React meetup group in London. You lead mobile at Theodo. I always think of the BAM. You know, I say Theodo BAM, but I know we're Theodo now. And you also have a very exciting upcoming conference happening. So kind of help us make sense of your mission and what you're focused on, because I always think of you as the TV React Native guy, React Native TV blog. But I know it also, like, help us tie together, like, the work you do for clients, what you're working in the developer community space, and kind of what's top of mind for you all over there.
Yeah, I don't know where to start now.
Do you ever sleep?
Here and there, a little bit. Yeah, so I had the mobile team at Theodo, and for those of you who've been in this ecosystem for a while, you might know BAM, which used to be our mobile-specific company. There we go. She's sitting in the crowd, yeah. And recently, Theodo's a large group of people. It's about 700 people across the world. We consolidated some of the brands because we had scaled massively and there wasn't the brand recognition, so we all became Theodo. And so we're now under one banner, but it's really the exact same company, the same structures and everything. Nothing has changed internally. And so being a part of BAM/Theodo or whatever you call it, there's been an immense amount of opportunity to go out and understand what's happening with the ecosystem. BAM's been very open in letting us, and Theodo's been very open in letting us go out and start our own communities. That's how the React Native London meetup was started. In 2016, there was 5 engineers around a laptop. Wow. That was the community in London. There wasn't that many people. This was before a lot of even the maintainers today, you know, were doing React Native. There were just these engineers there. And then it grew and it grew and it grew. And, you know, now we have 100+ people coming to the meetup every month. So my job's a little bit of everything. You know, client projects, if there's something on fire, they'll be like, Mo, we need you for 2.5 days. And I'm like, cool, let's do that. And then working on some of these open source initiatives, you mentioned the React Native TV blog. For me, it was React Native TV, I feel, is very underloved and underappreciated. You know, there's so much potential for React Native on TV, because if you think iOS and Android fragmentation is bad, holy shit, you're in for a prize when it comes to TV. There are so many platforms, and it's tough. And so it was the perfect opportunity to leverage React Native, and yet there wasn't much info out there. Like, how do you build good TV apps? Where do you build TV apps from? What tools do you use? And so on and so forth. And so what we did was me and a few people from Trag's team, actually, we said, you know what, let's try to at least consolidate a little bit. Let's put something, so we very open source, like anyone can come in and add their talk, add their article. We just put a place where you can centralize information about React Native TV with the goal of trying to make it more and more extensible, and at least there's a place where people can go in to get introduced and familiarized. So there's a few stuff like that. You mentioned the conference.
What's going on with the conference? Tell us about it.
Yeah, so it's been in the making for years now. Yeah. I found a document internally that says we've been talking about this since 2019. That's before my time at Theodo. So, but no, it's been a dream of ours and myself ever since joining the React Native London community and becoming an organizer to make it a conference. There's 100+ people that are coming every month. It's a big community.
Focused on React Native?
Just React Native. Okay. There is no React meetup that meets regularly in London.
Right.
There's an ad hoc one, React Advanced London, that meets up. The React Native London, it happens almost every single month in London, and we get 100+ attendees every month, different faces as well. And so we were like, you know what? We're not conference organizers. We haven't done this several times. But you know what? Let's give it a shot. It's a community event. Let's get something out there. Let's start medium-sized and expand up from there. So yeah, November 14th and 15th in London. We'd love to host you, obviously, since Trag mentioned. So search up React Native London if you're interested, and it'd be my pleasure to host you folks.
Awesome. Mike, I want to throw it back to you because you're handling the DirecTV experience across a lot of different devices. I think it's safe to assume when we talk about focus management, we can get abstract, especially if web developers haven't dealt with the agony and ecstasy of having to control something on a remote control. When you have a tablet or a phone, focus management is wherever you touch, swipe, gesture, etc. Suddenly, you have a large 10-foot experience, and all you have is up, down, left, right, okay, maybe like reverse pause if you're lucky. And so I would be curious, the modes of interaction are going to be different across platforms, and this is something that your engineering team has to think deeply about. And so I'd be curious, can you talk about your team's focus Yeah, sorry, that was a pun. Can you talk about focus management across the platforms, and how does it affect performance optimization? Like, how do you think about those two? Because I'm assuming there's trade-offs you're having to make.
Yeah, that's 100% true. Anybody who has dealt with focus management can feel that pain, that challenge that you need to kind of approach and take on and think really strategically about to make sure that you're not going to impact performance. One of those things is, obviously, when you're using like web and you're using mobile tablet, like you said, it's point and click, right? And as soon as you have a remote in your hand, you're almost, if you think about it, like from a user standpoint, you don't have to worry about this. You expect it just to work, right? But from an engineer, you're almost wiring up a user journey, over and over again to all the different places for where you expect the focus to land over time, right? And if you don't get one right, focus could, quote unquote, disappear or go somewhere you don't expect. And that's weird as a user, right? I was actually watching my son utilize a specific streaming app, and they expected the focus to go somewhere, but when they pressed over, it took them somewhere else. And he's like, "Oh, I'm frustrated, Dad. Why is this happening?" And I was like, "Well, it's a product decision. Where should the focus go? Where do I believe the user should end up when they press right? It's a complex problem, right?" And then you got performance, right? Then you got to think about all these different user journeys where you're trying to wire up this focus management and make sure the most important piece, which is performance, stays fast. There's no latency in between clicks. And as you saw in my presentation, that can happen, that latency can happen, and it makes you feel as a user like, the app doesn't care about you, right? The app is, what is this? I'll just sit here for a little while the screen updates. That's frustrating, right? So we want to provide the best user experience possible, so we have to make trade-offs with that, right? We got to think again, strategically, what is the most important thing to happen when the user presses focus? And it might be obvious. Get to the next item, get to the next place, get to the next focusable element. But you might want to show other things on the screen, like metadata associated to the given item that you're about to focus, right? That might be outside of your traditional React component subtree where focus is actually headed. So you got to build these utilities, these tools that allow you to kind of have that oversight of where focus could go, but also be able to propagate focus to other related components, right? And that's the architecture approach you need to think about before you actually start designing something. So you use techniques like context, right? You're passing it down to the leaf nodes that need focus, and then you're also using techniques like a lot of you obviously are familiar with throttling and debouncing, so that you can focus on just the pieces, pun intended again, just the pieces that actually matter to focus quickly, and then throttling the other pieces to come in later, right? So the user knows, oh, my focus moved there, and they might see the next piece come in or fade in after that, and then the experience is great. They got to where they wanted to go. They saw it happen quickly, right? But at the same time, you got the extra information afterwards, right?
When my son was 3 years old, I remember distinctly him like running around the house in a diaper, and he looks at the TV and it's playing, and he just walks up to it and starts slapping it, thinking it's a touch screen. And I had a moment and thought, like, the expectations of my 3-year-old, like, this generation assumes, why can this not? And it is really interesting when you think about, like, a TV is not a laptop processor. If you're watching something in a car, it's just everything's going to be a different form factor. Very good point. Arushi, I want to throw it back to you. So I think there's some misconceptions, and this is my opinion, that if you implement the new architecture, you automatically have a ton of performance improvements. And I think it would be really helpful to kind of reset, like, what is the mission? In launching new architecture, what are some of the value props that come with implementing it? And is there any correlation to performance? And what would you love developers to know? Even you can talk about Fabric or turbo modules, but I really would love to get your take and the React team's take on the vision and the purpose of a new architecture.
Yeah, I think one thing to consider there is new architecture was not written with the purpose of performance. It was written with the purpose of like those enhanced capabilities, like content rendering, all of those capabilities. That's what it brings to the table. Of course, performance comes as a byproduct. That's something it was not written.
Second order effect.
Yeah, exactly. And when it comes to like all of these missing pieces of it, like turbo modules, the new native module system, and the new renderer, I think I mentioned it in the talk as well. They are all like the puzzle pieces of this new architecture. And they complete the rollout of the new architecture. So they are all part of it as much as other capabilities that bring with it.
Right. I think similar, I kind of want to have Michał, I'd love for you to jump in this a little bit. Performance improvements and making sure you have a great experience for users is top of mind for you, for CallStack, for the open source libraries that you and your team maintain, obviously for your clients. Could you tell, I'm curious, like, what's your preferred tooling when it comes to making sure your app has a great experience? And for the folks in this room that maybe are React devs thinking about React Native, what are the must-have tools that they should be thinking about when it comes to having a great experience?
Yeah, so I think performance is still a challenge in React Native, especially in out of tree platforms, because we don't have as much computing power on some custom boxes, for example. And my key piece of advice for those who are developing the new apps is to kind of think about performance from the day one. So equip yourselves with proper tooling. And for those who have existing apps, make sure that you understand how the performance looks like on the users' devices. And for those who are looking for some optimization techniques, we did create the performance optimization guide, which is essentially a 100 pages book that you can download from our site. But you ask about the tooling. So if I think about the tooling for performance, I think about what tools do we need on a certain stage of the development process. And we need something crafted for production, we need something crafted for the testing, and we need something crafted for debugging in your development environment. And I would start from production, because I think this is the most important. So here you should invest in some observability tools. There's Sentry, there's Instabug, Datadog, many tools out there that you can simply integrate to your app, or you can create some custom solution for that. But make sure that you gather these metrics, that you understand them, and that you make them actionable. So this is the key aspect of the production monitoring. For testing, we do have Reassure, which is...
Raise your hand if you've used Reassure before. Okay, so...
Not that many, but I strongly recommend
Tell us about it.
You do. It's a tool built on top of Jest and React Native testing library, and it's used for controlling the performance regressions in your React and React Native applications. So basically, in the synthetic environment, you can tell how long does it take for your component to render and how many re-renders they were for certain testing scenarios. And what's also great is that if you already have some existing testing scenarios in React or React Native testing library, you can plug in Reassure and kind of start benefiting from that. So make sure to keep it under control, and you should be good. And for the development environment, you can also use Reassure. You can use React Native the debugger, and you can use Flashlight from BAM. It's also a great tool that provides kind of...
Well, you got to give a quick plug, right, to Flashlight.
Thanks, Michał. Flashlight was originally created by one of my colleagues, Alex Moreau, who frequents a lot of these stages. Raise your hands if you've heard of Flashlight. Amazing. I wish Alex was here. He's not, but a big shout out to him and his team for working on it. The idea with Flashlight was to try to create a very simple way to think about performance in the way that web developers think about performance. So web developers have a very easy interface to go to when they think about performance. Lighthouse, right? So the idea was, could we create something similar to that with the right metrics in place for mobile? So things like your FPS, things like your RAM usage, things like your RAM usage, things like your CPU usage, and splitting that by thread as well to really understand like where are the problems that you're facing. And you pair that with a potential end-to-end testing tool like Maestro as an example, and you can see real user flows. Where do you have a spike in your CPU usage? Where do you have a spike in your RAM usage? And so on and so forth, and really start to understand, based off of how the user interacts, how does your app perform? So very similar, like you could throw in an APK and it just kind of works. And one of the beautiful things is it works across all of the different platforms that are supported by Flashlight. So we use it for TV. So we've used it for our clients on TV-based platforms, which is hard to optimize performance for, as everyone will know. We use it for mobile devices, and we also use it. We've set up a pipeline to test React Native itself and make sure that there aren't regressions in React Native, and we've shared it with the folks at Meta, and that's all of Alexander and his team's hard work, which is really, really cool.
So piggybacking on Flashlight, Bart, I want to talk about just live TV. Live TV, there's a lot of complexities. You were touching on it earlier. I think when it comes to live TV, broadcast streams, live sports, a phrase I've heard repeatedly from different developers is glass-to-glass latency, just the struggle there. So I want you to talk a little bit about even what the heck is glass-to-glass latency. And I think also, we probably take for granted the intense user expectations of live sports, TikTok, anything that is a mode of interaction that involves live video where if there's any delay, it's going to mess the whole thing up. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit from React Native Video, from TWG, from some of your customers. What are the current user expectations, and where do you feel like things are heading when it comes to weaving live TV experiences into React Native apps?
Yeah, okay, so let's start with this glass-to-glass. So it's basically about first glass, which is the camera, and the second glass, which is the viewer screen.
So the full loop between the recording to seeing it live.
Yeah, end-to-end. This is the time, and the glass-to-glass latency is basically the time between one to another. And basically for the stream to be considered real time, it's basically up to, I don't know, like 2 seconds.
2 seconds.
3 seconds. I mean, it's going lower and lower, and we see things like ultra latency with like, I don't know, half of a second, things like that. But this is super hard to get. And when it comes to the streaming and streaming platforms like Twitch, you got like you got streamers who wants to interact with their viewers. Live
comments, live emojis, things that are beyond just video.
Yeah, kind of like having a chat, or like having donations, or you want to buy something during the stream. You actually want to do it in real time, and it now seems to be more like a kind of like a video call when you expect to be real time again. So what are the other challenges over there? You mentioned like big events, streaming of big events. You really want to have, you really want to cheer at the same time when your neighbor is cheering.
Yeah, you don't want to hear people cheering 3 seconds before you. Okay,
that would be
fair enough.
But other challenges down there are like challenges like expectations. You mentioned expectations. So the expectations are quite high right now. Like I've got brands reaching out to us and ask, okay, we want this feature from the XYZ app, and also we want to add something extra, so we know we're original. So like imagine the level of complexity we got. So the standards are high, and then they want, like, somebody wants to have something new. So
real-time face filters with, I could imagine like the poor phone.
Yeah, like face filters.
Laptop falling over and processing.
You may actually do something like this in the video. Like you saw Mark Rosavi drawing on the camera. You can actually draw on video on each frame.
Right, like the audience is being part of the performance or the live stream itself.
Oh yeah. So basically, you can do it on device, and so only you as a viewer can see how do you actually customize the video you see. Or you can actually use, let's say, some data from the frame to influence the other UI on the screen. So you can actually like decouple
upvoting. There's just so many different interactions.
Whatever, like you can actually, like, sky's the limit. Like you can actually decouple the video and put some parts in on some of the UI, or like you can blur the view. So yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. Mo, I've observed you have been a long-time ardent champion of the concept of universal apps. Walk us through, kind of for the folks that have not thought about monorepo or universal apps. Walk us through kind of what the value props are from your perspective. But also, I think a question I've heard several times in the last 2 days is like, how realistic is universal apps for TV apps, for the TV experience?
Sure. So I like to start this with quite a controversial statement,
Let's have it. Let's go.
which is pretty bad when you say it to a room filled with mobile developers, but my belief is that the mobile first era is over. There we go. Oh, some claps. Okay, this is good.
I'm going to get cabbage thrown at my head
Yeah,
here. Okay.
tomatoes at mine.
Tough crowd.
But why is it over? Well, if you look at what the percentage is and the growth of mobile and all of this stuff, it's actually starting to flatten. Now, what that means is when you look at like the next era of front end, we're going into one where people are seeing more and more devices scattered all over their life. Everything is becoming very digitally interconnected. So you wake up in the morning, you open up your phone, you start looking at emails, then you go into your kitchen and you've got your Echo Dot device there and you're listening to the news while you're there, and then you go into the living room and you open up the TV and you watch the news on the TV, and then you open up your desktop and so on and so forth, and all of these experiences are connected and intertwined for you as the user. And so naturally as an app developer, you're going to have to start targeting a lot of devices. Have you folks seen the smart fridges that Samsung's been creating? It's got Android on a fridge. Like,
Put it anywhere.
It's getting bad. And so the poor app developers are going to have to target everything under the sky to be competitive. And that costs a lot of money to do that natively for each platform. And you mentioned the product teams that you have at DirecTV. Like, any organization, as they grow and scale the number of platforms, they're going to have a real tough time coordinating releases across these products, and the product teams are really going to be having a lot of gray hairs added to them. So ultimately, the vision with Universal Apps for me is that we have the technology that I think can solve the write once, run anywhere problem. Java tried to do it, failed. Flash tried to do it, failed. And the reason I think all of these frameworks and tools failed at doing this was because they thought that they could be better than the native layer. So Java had the JVM. So it was like, I'll run this in a virtual machine and I will get better than native performance. Flash did the same thing out of the Flash runtime, and if you folks remember Flash on mobile, it was bad. And then we have another technology that's cross-platform that's trying to do the same thing these days. It starts with F and ends with Flutter.
Pour one out for my Flutter peeps.
Yeah. But trying to create your own canvas that can resemble native UI doesn't solve the problem. It just really removes the nativeness of that feel for the user, and that's not something that is conducive to solving the problem. You need a technology that's architecturally created in a way where it can be native and tailored to each platform, and it can still have a common API so that app developers are not having to build it multiple times. Now, you mentioned TV, and I'll just go quickly through this. TV, as we mentioned, is far worse in terms of fragmentation. Mm-hmm. And it's got a whole bunch of different OSs that are out there, far more than 2. And we've actually started using React Native for TV on real production-grade applications. We've used it for public broadcasters across Europe now. And it's one code base that's targeting tvOS, Android TV, web, and setup boxes, and more to come at this point. And for us, there are challenges. Performance can get really difficult to optimize on each of these platforms, and you need to know what to share and what not to share. However, I really do think that it is the technology that will solve this problem, and I think we just need to align as a community and get there, and we can talk about that more later if you'd like.
For sure. We're going to do a quick lightning round in a little bit. Mike, I want to ask you a question before we jump into kind of the end part. I've noticed you've had several engineering leadership roles where a core part of what you were doing on that team was helping raise developers up, certainly teaching them React Native. Obviously, I can assume that also means everyone needs a piece of your time, and it's probably pretty hard in an engineering leadership role to stay sharp, stay on top of the tech. And so I'm curious, do you have any techniques or any things you do to keep yourself sharp, stay on top of the new trends, because folks are looking to you of what we should do next? And also, I'd be curious if there is any tech or any projects you're kind of hacking on the side as a way to learn.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, and this doesn't work for everybody, and so this is more exclusive to my views and my opinion. I think it's really important to stay relevant to what's actually happening and being written at the code level, the software being produced, right? I feel as though if you can stay involved, that doesn't mean you're writing code every day, right? If you can stay involved, whether that's a PR review or making a helpful little utility that you see your team struggling with and they need something and you know how to help, you should contribute, and you should. What I believe is important is leading by example, right? Again, it doesn't work for everybody, and it's time consuming but what I see is it really helps, at least for me, make sure I'm making the right technical decisions at that leadership level, because I see what's happening at the the software level, right? And if we're making good technical choices at that higher level, we can guarantee we're going to head in the right direction from a product standpoint as well, right? That collaboration with our product department, that's so important. So that's really near and dear to my heart. It works well for me. It's really important, and it makes sure that I'm staying sharp and make sure I'm making the right decisions at that one level higher. In terms of things that I do to stay sharp or side projects that I work on, disappointingly I don't have a ton of time for side projects, but one of the cool things that I don't know if it was coincidental or just the stars aligned is, a few years ago, I was really into trying to figure out the IoT thing, because IoT was just starting to be hot. I was like, this is really cool. I wanted to get my fingers dirty and try it out, and my love for JavaScript obviously prevailed. I'm like, writing in C++ is cool, right? And it just takes longer, at least for me, right? So JavaScript, I would just write really fast, and I could prototype, and I could try things out. And I was like, let's do JavaScript on IoT. And a lot of you are like, that sounds like a terrible idea. We're talking about TV performance. Now target a microcontroller, right? So I really got involved with that. And again, this wasn't technically for my work. It was just like a side thing. I wanted to see if I can, try it out and see if it would work, right? And we have, if anybody's familiar with trying to do that kind of stuff, you had Puck.js at the time, right? And I didn't want to go for that more open source or everybody's trying that one at the time, standpoint. I wanted to do something a little different. And this guy from London was implementing Esperino, right? That's another a JavaScript microcontroller, embeddable JavaScript engine. And I tried that out, and I was like, this is so cool. And it was on his proprietary hardware, and then a month later, it was like, oh, you can also run it on cheaper hardware too, not my hardware. And I was like, that's amazing. I'm gonna buy an ESP32, and I'm gonna try to get it to run on there, right? And that was the most this gratifying satisfaction experience that I've had, because I was able to build it sounds simple, but a whole registration flow and actual product, turning on and off a light switch with my phone, right? It was Wi-Fi enabled, right? And you could use the little web app, right? As a web app, it wasn't even React Native, and turn your light switch on and off. It was really, really fun,
I love it.
And it kept me sharp,
I love it. Thank you. I want to do. We got a couple questions. We're going to do a lightning round here, and so let's see how we do. So a friend of mine who does a lot of panels. I'm going to geek out here. I brought a special bell. All right. So everyone have an open mind here. We have a fancy bell. I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to say your name. I'm going to ring a bell, and just go for it. So let's do a test round. You have just spent the last week in Poland, and are now an honorary Wrocławian.
Wrocławianin.
Yes.
That was loud.
Mo, what is your favorite new dish that you're bringing home?
Pierogies.
Mike.
Guamki.
Bart.
Come on, I live in Poland, so yeah. Water, yeah.
Not beer. Okay, Michał.
Schabowy.
Arushi.
I think pierogi.
Pierogi, I would say pierogi too. Here's another one. This one's a stretch. Through some magical turn of events, you're stranded on a remote, deserted island, and you can only choose, or you can only bring 3 of your favorite React Native libraries or developer tools. What's your pick, Mike?
Reanimated, Flash List, and the JS Hermes Profiler.
Mo.
You guys are not being strategic. I'm getting out. React Native maps, Expo location, Expo localization. I'm building an app to get me out.
Arushi.
I think Expo, it has everything.
All right, Expo. Bart.
Do you've got a video up there?
I see what you did there.
Yeah, no video, no TV?
You can have a TV. I don't know if you have electricity, but you could definitely
Yes,
have
I
a
would
TV.
take reacting video, yeah. Reacting TVOS and reanimated.
Michał.
Geolocation, because then I would have stuff to do, and just because it's fun.
Okay. All right. You're daydreaming about all the versions of React and React Native that have come before you. I want to know your first version of React Native, and do you have any favorites? Mo.
Somewhere in the late 50s, early 60s, and 72 is my favorite release so far.
Okay, Mike.
Early 60s and 73.
Bart.
50-something.
Michał.
20-something, and my favorite is always the latest.
Woo! Arushi.
Yeah, my favorite is 74.
Okay. Next question, and I am biased. I am clearly one of the TV guys. I wish I could give you all Fire TVs right now. I like this one. So, what is a TV show or movie that you wish you could watch again for the first time? Michał.
How I Met Your Mother.
All right. Mo.
Better Call Saul.
Mine was Breaking Bad. All right, all right. Mike.
Boy Meets World.
Bart.
Dragon Ball.
All right. All right. And Arushi.
Yeah, it's cheesy. P.S. I love you.
I love it. Folks, we're all going to be at the after party, which I'm hearing. I have high expectations here. I'm very excited about it. I just want to take a moment, and I want to thank you all for being part of this. I loved just the conversation, and if you folks have questions, come up to all of us. Let's just continue the conversation. For any of you watching online, feel free. We all have social handles. Feel free to ask questions, and we're super excited about what you build. Folks here, thank you so much for joining us. Huge round of applause for our panelists. Thank you.